Today, we're going to be talking about a big topic that is close, not near and dear. It's actually, I'm sure, very disturbing to most of you, but we're going to be talking about family court, how to keep your sanity when you go to family court with a narcissist. So I know many of you end up, you think you get out of this relationship, and I know that none of us are naive to think that custody is going to go easy, but we get into family court and think, well, finally, there's going to be a judge and maybe a mediator, and there's going to be reason. It's going to become more reasonable. I can't reason with this person, but maybe the judge, maybe the mediator is going to reason with this person, and it goes completely sideways. Or, and here's what I wanted when I was going to family court. Actually, I didn't go to family court. Divorce happens in family court too, actually. Family court handles custodies as well as divorces, but I wanted justice, frankly. I wanted the world to know that the person I had just left was the worst scumbag in the world, and he already had taken me for all that he could. So why in the world should I have to give him more because it'd been already unreasonable? Or maybe you're with a situation where the person you've been with has prevented you from having anything reasonable. They've starved you financially, limited your access to accounts, maybe kept your name off bank accounts. Maybe you don't even know what they bring home on a pay stub because they've kept that hidden. And you're going into this hoping that somehow there's some equity, only to find out there is none. Or you think, you know what, this person's basically let me raise the kids by myself. I've been home doing this. They're going to see reason and not disrupt what we're already doing and doing well. And then suddenly they want 50-50 custody. I It goes wrong all the time. So let's get into it today. I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr-McAvoy. Let's talk about why it's never reasonable when you go to family court with a narcissist, why it goes wrong. And I'm also going to talk about the biggest mistake, actually several big mistakes that we're making, but I'm definitely going to get into some of the biggest mistakes we all make when we go to family court with a narcissist. So I'm so excited that you're here and that we're talking about this very difficult topic today because I want to have you have more success. That's my goal. My goal is that at the end of the day, you get what you should. You get what is certainly fair and more than right in this situation. But I know most of the time I have heard so many victims, so many survivors tell me that when they finish this whole production, that what they end up with is so far less than what they should have, and that this person's basically either ate up the money via court by all the ridiculous, endless, needless motions, or they end up giving in because they got a really lousy attorney on top of it, or they end up just giving in and giving up because it's just too exhausting and they don't have it inside them to do any more. So they just stop because it feels not worth it. So I'm super excited that you're here today. I create all sorts of content. I'm going to start to try to move this a little bit so that you can see my face. I'm looking at two places at the same time, and I'm kind of looking oddly. One of these places is losing a little bit, but I want to really get into about what we do wrong, what court is really about, what critical questions are happening inside a court. Now, I want to first of all give a caveat here because I have done these videos before, and then so many of you then ask me, please come as a special witness for me, be a expert testimony for me. But I want to let you know that that's not what I do. It's not a specialty of mine, and I usually decline those. Actually, I don't usually. I always decline them. I can definitely reference you to a better person or better people. I know of two sources that you would be far better served than me. So if you are struggling, don't hesitate reaching out to me, but just be aware that I won't be that individual who will go to be your your expert witness. That's just not something that I do. And I really want you to come out ahead, not come out behind. And I would be concerned, since I don't do it and don't know how to do it, that you wouldn't be best served by me. But let's talk about what first goes massively wrong in family court. And if you've never joined me before, if I'm completely new to you, please hit subscribe and become a subscriber, of a follower of this channel, a subscriber on YouTube or Facebook. I go live every Tuesdays at 4 p.m. and educate. This is what we do. We come here and we talk about some aspect of toxic relationships that a lot of us are getting wrong or maybe not navigating very well. And every week, the subjects vary. So I would love to see you back next Tuesday when we go live again. And next Tuesday, I'm going to be taking your questions about the inside of the mind of the narcissist. So if you have any burning questions about why do they do that, or how could they do that, or are they doing it on purpose? Please join me next week, because that's what we're going to be talking about, is all sorts of those issues. So I'm super excited about that. But let's get back into, I'm sorry about that. Suddenly everybody feels like it's the critical time to call me. But let's get back into about what goes wrong, the biggest mistakes that you do when you go into family court. I want to first start by saying that you deserve justice. You do. What you experienced, what you survived, the betrayals that you had in that relationship deserve justice. Unfortunately, that's not what family court's about. That's not even a question that is entertaining. That's something that you would pursue either through criminal courts, which is to say, was your rights infringed upon, and is there some crime that has been committed against you? That would be the criminal court would look at that. Civil court would want to know if you've been harmed, if there's been damages, or if one of your rights have been violated in some way. I mean, think of O.J. Simpson when Nicole's family couldn't win in the criminal case. They then went to civil as a way to say there were damages, although they couldn't prove through the prosecution that he actually did anything wrong. They were able to show that he harmed them, and there was a payout on that, I believe. I'm pretty for sure that happened that way. I'm dating myself, I know. Maybe most of you don't know that court case, although I'm sure you know who O.J. Simpson was, or is. I think he's still alive, right? Anyway, but that's not the question facing family court. Family court wants to know, I mean, when it's a divorce, family court wants to know, what are the community assets and how are you guys dividing them between you two? That's really all that it's asking. It's not even asking who did whom wrong. It's not trying to prove that this relationship should continue or was bad. Most states are no fault states. So that means that's not even a concern. You don't have to prove that this divorce is even needs a decision. So it's really about, at this point, about what's the community assets. Now, I know that this gets really, really difficult because some of you come in with assets. Like in my case, I came in with a lot of assets and he came in with no assets. He came in with debt. So, in that case, in fact, I just heard an interview that was fascinating today. It was with an attorney who said, we should get a prenup, because prenuptials, basically, if we don't get a prenup, then what we're saying is we're gonna trust the state to divide the assets fairly between us. And why would we do that? We don't do that with a will. We don't go to probate and say, okay, yeah, here's all this that this person has accumulated in their whole life. We're going to let the state decide who it should go to and where. And we all know what happens with that. For one, it takes forever. And two, is it really dispersed fairly among all the people who this person loved? So why would we then allow the state to make that decision in these marriages, in relationships, especially when we know that the rate of divorce is 50%? So we're taking a coin toss and saying, oh, I hope that I don't get divorced. Okay, chances are 1 out of 2 you are. And then the other thing we do at the same time is we say, and I hope the state's fair when I get to the end and they divide the assets up fairly, because it gets really tricky figuring out who deserves what and who gets what, and how many of us know that if the narcissist starts planning way ahead. We all know that. I had a friend of mine who is married to a very brilliant man, a mathematician, and he knew he was going to leave her before he announced to her he was going to leave her. Do you know he started siphoning money off and putting it into another account? So she didn't even actually know what he brought home from work. And now they're dividing up assets, and he's not actually declared because he found some loophole with work to hide his real income. So she found out later that he'd stashed income away that she could never touch and have access to. Meanwhile, they had spent the entirety of their life together. I mean, they were together 30 years. And she, by the way, had put him through and finished up his PhD program and helped him through all his, his residency fellowships and stuff, while she stayed home, and she had a master's degree. So it wasn't like this woman is uneducated. She could have been earning big significant money as well, but they made a decision as a couple that she would take care of the kids and he would take care of the house by working and be outside the home. And then when it came right down to the end of it, oh, thanks, Annie, that OJ, I thought OJ died. And when it came right down to the end of it, that's not what happened. It wasn't fair. Oh, you guys are all telling me OJ. I thought he died. That's why I said was. I thought, you know what? I'm not up on current affairs. You guys all caught me with my pants down. I don't stay up on news. So I thought I had heard that he passed away, which is why there was kind of this little surge of interest around it. But anyway, so we make this assumption that somehow there's going to be equity in this situation, or at least like honesty. We assume like, I know all of you are like, really? Why would we assume honesty? This person's never been honest about anything. Yeah, exactly. And we're going to let them somehow say they're going to turn in all the paperwork and prove where everything is. Yeah, no, they're not. Not at all. So we're going to end up being at a real disadvantage if we go to court with this person. So, okay, a lot of you have wondered, why did I not get a prenup? If I came in with a lot of money, which I did, and he came in with nothing, why didn't I get a prenuptial? Well, because I was naive. Yes, let's just get that out of the way. I was naive, that's true. And I really, I already had a long relationship that ended because of death, not because of divorce. So I knew I had the staying power. I assumed he had the staying power, although you'll all tell me he didn't have the track record of it. So I had proof he had no track record of it. But, it's hard to accept that about somebody. The me to me today, oh, absolutely. I absolutely would. But here's the other thing. I moved to Mexico, and the laws of Mexico preempt the laws in the United States. So if I should have set up the company different, where I was vulnerable was not on my own money in the United States. I actually was not vulnerable there. He did not get any of the money in the United States, none at all, nothing. But where I was vulnerable was the company in Mexico, because I made him co-owner, and essentially not understanding how that all works, because I'd never done that before, that essentially that I shared my assets, not only shared power, which is what I think I was sharing. I didn't know I was sharing my assets. I wouldn't have done that. And thank you so much for that gift. That's super, super sweet. If I had known that, I wouldn't have shared, any of it. I would have been way more. What I wanted to do was 99 and 1, but I just thought, well, not a lot of people going into a marriage would be okay with a partner who went 99 and 1. Maybe women would, but men, I already was a little. So that was dumb on me, but don't be dumb like me. Don't make that mistake. So I really highly recommend that when you go, okay, so you don't have a prenup. Let's just get that out of the way. Most of us don't. We come to the end of the relationship, we go into court, and we think it's going to be fair, split fair. So one of the things I learned from talking to Bill Eddy, and this is one of the resources I highly recommend, if you're going into court and your partner and their attorney is nitpicking you with motion after motion after motion, start to put consequences to it. And if you haven't picked up Bill Eddy's book called Splitting, it's Splitting. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy to show you, but if that's one of the things I'd highly recommend that you do is you and your attorney start putting teeth to it. Start to say that this is, wasting the court's time. This is negligent issues. I'm not an attorney, so I don't know the lingo, but your lawyer should. They should recognize if this is no nuisance and nonsense stuff, but watch out for this. And this is the same problem that happens with psychologists. What makes a good attorney? Someone that represents you in as fast of time with as little out of pocket as possible, right? That's what makes a good, and represents you well to the best ability for your best end, for your best interest, right? Okay, let me tell you what it is for a psychologist. A psychologist should work themselves out of a job. When you come into my office back in the day when I was seeing clients, my job was to get you well as fast as possible with as little cost as possible. In other words, to end my job, which is kind of scary when you think about it, because that's not a good business model. But so what happens if you get disreputable people? They don't want that to happen. And they're willing to take your money time after time after time. So one of the big problems we make, and this is not the biggest problem. I'm going to tell you the biggest problem, but this isn't one of the big, this is a problem, but not one of the biggest. But one of the problems we often make is that we don't pick the right attorney. We don't pick somebody who's going to represent us. We pick somebody who's too invested in their business and their practice and too busy than to really sit down with you and understand what you're going through. I have heard so many of you in the Toxic Free Relationship Club tell me and describe to me how your attorney didn't even understand that they were working with a narcissist. You would describe this behavior and they'd think you're exaggerating. It couldn't really be that bad. They would think, oh, there's two sides to everything. Well, no, they're not. There's not always two sides. Sometimes your side is exactly as what it is. Are they listening to what you're saying? Do they realize that you've lived with this person and you're an expert on them? Now, maybe, again, you don't have all the right lingo. Maybe you're using a lot of clinical lingo. That's, by the way, another error. Don't go in and use terms like he's a narcissist. Say this is a person who's argumentative. He's very antagonistic. This person, she's very vindictive. And she's always looking out for her best end, and she's going to ask for what's unfair. You can go in and talk about these symptoms from a standpoint that describes the behavior without using buzzwords that turn the courts off. And they don't want to hear that you sound like a psychologist because they're going to tell you that you're not. And by the way, if I went in and even despite being a psychologist and having the credentials, when I go in, I'm a client. I'm a petitioner. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an expert. So I wouldn't use those buzzwords. Don't use those buzzwords because they work against you. It makes you sound like for one, here's the biggest problem. It's what's called operational. You need to describe things in an operational way. Like this person wakes me up 5 times a week and I can't get a good night's sleep. Describe behavior. Like this person turns everything into a fight. They're very argumentative. This person makes sure I always lose. They're vindictive and he's out for revenge or she's out for revenge. Describe it in a way that somebody could say, oh, that's measurable. Okay, so that's an unusual amount of time. Wow, I can see why that would be so frustrating. But when we just use words like they're narcissistic, well, what does that mean? In fact, I used to have clients come in the office and say, I want to be happy. Okay, what do you mean by happy? I have no idea what you mean by happy. One person's happiness is another person's probably hell, honestly. So, or you say, I want more peace. Well, what does more peace mean? Does that mean you mean that literally you want no dogs barking all night long or you want the neighbors quiet? What does no peace mean? So think about how to make your complaint operational, like definable, measurable, so that an outside person who listens to it like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what they're talking about. Like in therapy, they'd say, I want more peace. Well, what does that mean? I would like to have no arguments every week, maybe only one argument a month. Okay, so if a neighbor was watching through the window, they would know you guys are doing better because the arguments went down from every day to only once a month. See, that's measurable. I can tell you guys are doing better. But when you go into court and you say these big words they're too abstract, there's no context, and every person's context is a little bit different, they don't really know what you're talking about. And then you just sound sort of like pie in the sky, unrealistic, and maybe, a little bit of like Chicken Little thinking the sky is falling. So really watch your language when you go into court, because that's one of the biggest things that just doesn't go over very well. Another problem with custody cases is that we end up thinking it's about proving that the person abused us so that makes them a bad parent because they're abusive. Well, unfortunately, and this is just kind of like sad, but unfortunately, your abuse doesn't mean the court believes that parent's bad for your children. I know. As a psychologist, that's a hard one for me to swallow because abusive people are abusive. So if they're abusive to you, they're going to be abusive to everybody. And I'm sure they are. I'm sure it's not just limited to you. It's happening everywhere to everyone. But in their minds, they want to see the abuse specific to the child. That's the big issue. They want to know. So they have 2 essential questions. So I'm going to tell you now the biggest mistake, and let's talk about the rest because it kind of ties into this. The biggest mistake most of us have when we walk into court is we want justice, and we're not going to get it. We need to leave that behind. This is not the place to get it. Justice may never come. Honestly, let's just get super truthful here. It may never come. You're going to have to find your own justice and make your own peace with yourself about what happened to you. But family court is not going to find it for you. And too often we go in and we want vindication, and we want fairness. We also want acknowledgement. This person's a shitty human being, and they're not going to give it to us. Their big question is this, and I know I've said this before. Sorry, I've got something in my contact. Their big 2 questions are, what's in the best interest of the children? And can these 2 people cooperate towards that end? That's all they want to know. I'm probably driving you nuts with my contacts. Sorry. I may have to take it out. Let's see if I can get it past here. Okay. Yep, I think it's going to be okay. I think I'm going to survive here. So let me say that again. Their biggest question is, what's in the best interest of this child or children? And can these two people cooperate towards that end? That's all they care about. So your job then, you and your attorney's job is to go in and prove that being with that parent is not in their best interest. That may be hard to do. You're going to have to think about practical, remember, it's got to be operational, practical examples. And here's the thing that I learned from Lisa Sunny, and we talked about it in this week's podcast on breaking free from narcissistic abuse. So if you want Lisa's opinion on all of this, and she's gone through this, and so she's got a lot of really good opinions, I'd highly recommend listening to this week's Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. But a lot of times we'll say, well, they don't change their diapers often enough, or they feed them McDonald's too often, or feed them fast food too often. I'm sorry, they're feeding them. That's not the same. It'd be, here's, let me give you an example. I know this would be an example that CPS would say this is a problem, but they wouldn't say McDonald's or fast food every day is a problem. But for example, say your child has severe diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and you know there is literally nothing in that refrigerator, nothing. And you know that child's not getting 3 meals a day. Maybe their usage of insulin has to be adjusted because the food intake is wrong. Or maybe they've had an emergency ER visits because the food's been wrong or been miscalculated. See, that's concerning. That's not in the best interest of the child. But to eat fast food every day, yeah, I agree. Would I want my kid doing that? Absolutely not. I wouldn't. It's not good for them. It's not good for their health. And it's kind of a lazy ass thing to do. I mean, honestly. So I understand people's anger and rage over that. And I understand if your baby comes home with a diaper rash because it's sitting too long in a wet diaper, I get that. But is that really like real signs of abuse? There's the stuff that gets super tricky. And what happens is we go in and we look petty because the court says, so what do you want me to do? Do you want me to mandate how many baby diaper changes there has to be in a day? And do you want to live up to that? You know, do you want to, like, how often should they feed them carrots? 3 times a week? So courts don't want to have to decide those types of things. So we often get into the weeds and miss the bigger picture. The bigger picture is, how do you prove this parent is not a good parent with this child? And that gets tougher. I know a lot of you will end up feeling like, I don't know how to prove it very well. And I also know, some of you are going to tell me, but Kerry, I've done that. I worked with somebody who had horrific proof of abuse, SA, around this person was a predator, and the courts still weren't going to hear it because they didn't have proof that the person was a predator with that child. And you're thinking, yeah, but there's predation and there's evidence of that. And wouldn't they think that the next natural thing is this person's going to do it to that kid? Yeah, honestly, as a psychologist, I would see that as risky. But it takes a lot more for the courts to buy in. And it depends on the judge you get. Not all judges have the same views of things, unfortunately. And not everybody's informed about all of these things. And I know that at the end of the day, that ends up like being maddening. We get so angry about all of this because it's wrong, it's short-sighted, it's our kids. We get super invested in that, and it's hard. I get that. But keep it in mind that those big questions are what's dictating what the court's interested. Here's another thing I just learned from Lisa that we talk about in that Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse podcast this week. Did you know there's often a limitation to how much paperwork and documentation you can submit? So if you have, like we all tell you, create a document, a legal document with date, timestamp, people, witness, and what was actually said. That's great. But use that document to then create a summary. It's like, so if you notice there's screaming, there's like using epitaphs and just losing it on this kid, you use that to say there are 5 incidents. And again, I don't know the right language, so please, don't use my language. Talk to an expert. Angela at Family Corner is a really good one. Onyx Counseling or Consulting is another one. But find a legal coach to help you with the right language. But you want to summarize it and say, this person loses it this many times this kind of a way. You don't just submit like reams and reams of, like data, like daily logs. The courts doesn't have time to go through it. They're not going to go through it. And you may find that the court only allows maybe 12 pages and you've submitted, yes, thank you. And you submitted 40. So submitting 40 pages when you're only allowed 12, you're not really making your case. So be aware. That's another big mistake we make, is we don't go in knowing the limitations, knowing the expectations. Like, just like when you submit to a competition, you need to read the rules. You need to read the rules when you go into this and know what's allowed, what's not allowed, and then follow those rules, whether it's reasonable in your opinion or not. Follow the rules and find out how to best follow the rules so that you can make your best case, so you can protect yourself. So going back to the biggest mistake that we all make, which is we really want justice. You have to find justice on your own. And that's really, really tough, and it's not fair, and it's not the way it should be. Your toxic person's not going to give you closure, and they're not going to give you answers, and they're not going to explain why they did what they did, and they're not going to stop doing what they did, because it's who they are. It's that a personality disorder means that there's a disordered personality. Personality defines who you are. So if I had a personality disorder, that means I'm a person who's as difficult person. I'm a difficult person. That's what it means. I'm an antagonistic, difficult person. This person isn't going to see reason, isn't going to make sense, isn't going to become suddenly logical. There's no explaining this away. That you're not going to appeal to the reason and stop them being overly emotional and dramatic. They're not. And the other thing is they're highly manipulative, like highly, highly manipulative. I know I'm already talking to the choir. You all understand that. So that means they're very good at making it sound like, so they'll take something small that you did, like maybe you weren't available, the phone didn't ring, or nobody heard it ring on a Friday night when it's that person's turn to talk to the kids, and they'll say, you didn't make the arrangement to be there, and you're obstructing their opportunity to have contact with their kids. I know they do crap like that. I know that, which is maddening. It's exhausting. It's just like never ending. One of my club members told me in the mediation, there was multiple accounts that they were dividing. And one of the accounts, he had stolen the money out. It actually didn't belong to either one of them. It was a business account. He'd stolen the money out. It belonged to customers. It was like deposits they were sitting on of other people. He emptied the account. And then he said, she can have that account, knowing it was empty because he'd already cleaned it out. I know they do crap like this all the time. I know that. It's mind-blowing. It's just not reasonable. It makes you super angry, and it's so unfair, and you want to pull your hair out. Absolutely. Now, I don't have any hair to pull out, but if I did, it would make me want to pull my hair out. So one of the things I want to highly recommend that you guys do is that Lisa, Sunny, and I are offering a 10-week group coaching that's going to talk about all the exploitation and manipulation that happens in co-parenting, legal cases, not the legal piece, but the emotional, psychological piece that happens, how to keep your sanity, how to maintain these boundaries, how to be calm and presentable, how to spot them so that you don't get pulled in again. Because I don't know, I just heard this other story. Somebody didn't go get their belongings, still at this person's house, and this person said, I called them, despite should go no contact. I called them to get their crap out of my house. Like, why did you call them? Don't call them. There are other solutions that you could do that would be way better. You could just drop it off at their lawn. One person I knew happened to know the person's credit card number, opened a storage account in their name, put it in the storage account, and gave them the keys and says, here you go, here's all your belongings, and you have a monthly payment that you can close anytime that you want. And it made it that other person's problem. I thought that was brilliant. So there are other ways that you can get through this that we don't need to try to make them see reason or convince them that this is the month they need to come get their last t-shirt. Because you know why it's still at your house, right? It's because it's the foot in the door. That way they can push in on some other opportunity. So yeah, that's what we're going to be covering in the new Powerful You. It's 10 weeks, an hour and a half, and Wednesday afternoons. It's going to be from 3 o'clock in the afternoon Central Standard Time, so an hour earlier than this time. And if you're struggling, I highly recommend that this would be an amazing opportunity for you to get the help that you need so that you can stop feeling like they're driving you insane. The link is in my bio. I also put it in the show notes for those of you on Facebook and on YouTube. But I'm now going to put my glasses on because I don't know if you guys could tell. Oops, where's my glasses? Because this could be bad. Well, maybe there's another solution here. Yeah. Oh, okay. I can now see your questions. All right. I'm now going to start taking questions and slow down talking, but I couldn't see very well up to there. So that's why I wasn't really answering anybody's comments. Alrighty, so although my case is complete and different than yours, Kerry, you helped me get through my personal, You helped me get through it because you described and understood the dynamics. I'm so glad, Krista. I'm glad that you felt validated and that you felt like that you were really feeling seen and heard. By the way, one of the things that I a few weeks back, if you became a subscriber on my newsletter for $5 a month, I actually had a whole list of questions that you should ask an attorney to be able to make sure that you choose a good attorney, because I see a lot of us accidentally pick a narcissistic attorney. Now, I want to just warn you, I think there are a lot of them are narcissistic. I've also noticed, and please be careful when you pick a psychologist and a psychiatrist out too, because a lot of them as well can be narcissistic. So we have to be careful. We can't think that just because somebody holds a position of power, that makes them safe. It does not. And a person who's narcissistic, I don't care what role they hold, and I don't care how supposedly they're in your best interest and in your corner, they're not. They're only in their corner. So I have heard so many of you describe the way in which you have been misrepresented, poorly represented, or let down or blown off because you hired the wrong attorney. So that's the best step that we can go, is we need to find somebody who's healthy. Yeah, exactly. Right there. It's a great example. Somebody said my ex is a social worker and is also narcissistic. I know of, in the county that I worked in when I had a private practice, I can tell you of at least 2 people that I knew that were narcissists as psychiatrists. I also knew of 2 men, probably could think, no, 3. I know of 3 situations in which the social worker or psychologist had taken advantage of or abused their clients. 2 of them SA. It was SA. So please do not assume just because somebody has an authority of power that they're safe. They're not. So if you would like that list of questions, consider becoming a paid subscriber. The link is always in Facebook and Instagram. Actually, I don't have it in my link offerings, but I will make sure to put it in there. Always here, I have way too much. Yeah, I wouldn't, someone talk about we're defying a judge. So I wouldn't defy a judge. That's not smart. That's not smart. That could go real wrong. Judges usually are assigned to a case and rarely ever removed. So you're stuck with that person. If you make them an enemy, that could go really bad for you. LT, I'd love to know what you mean by education and intelligence makes narcissists more dangerous. Oh, you're talking about the trained people that I was referring to. Yeah, it means that they know the system and they know how to take advantage of the system because they know it so well. So Maria is saying, my adult children were people who made me see where the problem was, and the dynamic of the parents' relationship was the problem, that mom was doing all the duties and dad was the person bringing in the bacon, and that's all he should have to do. So what do you do when you're in a situation in which your adult children are feeding into the problem, like Maria's is? I think the hard thing, Maria, is just because your kids feel that way doesn't mean that that's true. And also doesn't mean, I know that leaves you really unsupported. And I know that makes you feel really alone. And it also makes it probably feel like it's an us versus them situation, which is you against everybody else. That's why it's so important to get support so that you're not alone in that situation. So my next question for you, Maria, are you getting support? Have you been able to find a safe group of people that you can rely on so that you don't feel so alone? Because that can feel very alienated. I've known of other people who've described really losing their relationship with their children after surviving a narcissistic relationship. The kids basically sighed. And you know why, the reason why, right? The reason why is because narcissists, everything is competitive. It's always them against me or us against them. So they're very good at making people pick sides, that if you're for them, that means they got to be against you. And unfortunately, when kids really, even adult kids, want and need that connection with a parent, they'll often choose the unhealthier parent for the connection because they know that unhealthier parent will force it into a loss. So April said, my original childhood therapist was a narcissist and she put you in a box and I wasn't allowed to come out until it benefited her, not in my best interest at all. No, I mean, yeah. So clinicians can be abusive. So please be aware of that. Please be aware of that. So Kate, you're answering somebody about family court corner with Angela may have some advice. Yeah, the specifics like legal situations, I really can't get into because that's not my area of expertise, but I would recommend that you definitely reach out to legal coaches who do know more about that. And Angela at Family Court Corner, you can also find her on a website. Family Court Corner on a website is a really great resource. She's amazing. I've just heard fantastic things. Here's another bias that we often have about family court. We there's several biases. I'm going to talk about two of them that come right to my top of my head. One is that family court it never goes well for the victim. There's no way for victims to win. That's actually not true. There is ways for you to win. It's hard. And you're going to have to, because one of the things, I think the thing that victims tend to not do really well is that we don't collect ourselves before we go into court. We go in vulnerable, we go in worked up, we're scared, we're feeling, but of course you are. You're about ready to see your abuser. I'm sure you're in a flight or fight state. Absolutely. So we go in sweaty, worked up, edgy, we're already on defense, and of course the toxic person comes in dressed to the nines, calm, cool, collected, and confident that things that they have the right view of everything, and because they have learned through the years that bold confidence, even though irrational, often gets more credibility than fear and trepidation does. I know that's not fair. They've done studies of that, actually. They've looked at just like, bullshit level confidence tends to do better. We tend to, just look at the elections, guys. We tend to be attracted to confident people. So they come in looking really good. We come in looking really weak. We come in looking really irrational. So one of the things that you could do to your best advantage is to prepare. Do a lot of mental work so that you could go in, maybe even have someone role play the hot buttons. Have someone actually say all the unfair crap this person's going to accuse you of, so that when you get there and you hear it, if you have to be in the same room, that's another thing. Have you thought of asking not to have mediation in the same room? But so that even when the mediator comes back and say, well, they're saying this or they're saying that, have yourself be prepared so that you don't react irrationally. It's really hard work, but practice breathing, practice meditation before you go in. Work, like, role play it in your head. That actually helps, by the way. That's a huge advantage. Role play the scenario in your head. Imagine what you're going to say. Maybe script some things that you plan to say. Have them ready so that exactly. Collect the evidence. Get your testimony ready. Practice saying your testimony a few times. Maybe you need, by the way, you don't want to take a benzodiazepine, although you could certainly contact your doctor and ask for a prescription. But here's a better prescription to ask for. If you need help, if you're going to go in panicked, go ask your doctor for medication for stage fright or performance anxiety medication. That's what it's called. Not performance anxiety, what we're thinking about. We're not talking about that. We're talking about literal, like performance. You're performance, like what a musician or a singer or actor on a stage might use before they go out. There is a type of medication out there that actually calms the body down, moves it back into more of a parasympathetic state, so it gives you a clear head so you can think through it. I've used it because I have stage fright. It really is really beneficial. So you might want to go out and ask for that before you go into court. It's short-lived, so it lasts maybe 4 hours. And it doesn't mess with your thinking, doesn't mess with your head. It just kind of blocks the body's ability to move really well into fight or flight. So it kind of keeps your heart rate nice and low and your blood pressure nice and low. So that's one thing that you could do to really help maybe give yourself an edge or an advantage with it when the situation. The other mistake that we make when we get into court is that we, besides not being prepared and not really having a good collection of our feelings and we're not being prepared to not be overreactive, is that we end up not having good support. We end up like not thinking about having people around us to really help out. And make sure you have the support around you, the people that know that you're going in with before you do it, sending you good vibes, maybe praying for you. Make sure that you have people that are going to be around to like process it with you afterwards so that you can think about how you're feeling about it, or even as you're getting ready to go in for that week, the people who are invested, who are going to follow up, so that you end up feeling like you're not doing all this alone. So many of us just try to power through this. We've gotten hyper independent. We're so used to people not being there for us that we anticipate they're not going to be there for us on this as well. So really try to prepare for that. Okay, so LT asked, how do you deal with a passively aggressive person whose inaction causes the deadline to be missed? not my divorce case, but my narcissistic sister has sat on my dad's medically assisted death paperwork. Yeah, boy, that's a tough one because it's not a court case, so there's not like legal ramifications for obstructing justice or obstructing the court. Um, LT, I'm wondering, have you spoken to an attorney about it or spoken to the hospital social worker about what your options are? Is it possible that you don't need the sister's signature on it? Maybe somebody else's signature might work instead. Yeah, I would wonder if you could find another way around the situation so that you're just not at the mercy of this individual, which is what this person wants. She wants everyone at her mercy. And I bet you when you talk to her, she probably acts like she forgot and she'll do it tomorrow and she don't know what your big issue is. Or the other thing she may be doing is she's upset with you and all acting like you're somehow like hurting him or want ill will towards him, which is why she won't sign it. So yeah, I would find a way that you could either not need her signature or that you could compel her. That would be the big questions I have. Can you compel her? So the book marm is going to court tomorrow. My brother's going to come with me as a barrier and protection. I love that. I think that's a brilliant idea. So that's really, yeah, great. Yeah. Yeah, LT, I'm sure she's sitting on it. Of course she's sitting on it. I'm sure there's also workarounds, but so here's the other problem we get into. We have to find the nerve to enact these things. That's the hard part. And there's where the narcissist or sociopath or other toxic personalities have us pegged. They know that we often lack the courage of our convictions, that we're so nice and we're so sweet that we don't want to hurt anybody. So we don't do it because we just feel mean doing it. Like the example I gave you about dropping off their belongings in the yard, it was actually suggested to somebody and they said, yeah, but it might rain on it. Okay, but that's a risk your partner chose when they didn't come get it when you asked them to come get it. They took the risk of having it rain on them. So that's not under your control. So they make it all about you and make it your problem. It is not your problem. It is their problem. Okay, so it rains on all their belongings and they lose half of it. That's not on you. You warned them. It wasn't like you deliberately thought, I'm not going to tell you when I'm going to do that. I'm just going to one day, just when you don't know, I'm going to dump it on your lawn and it's all your, no, that's not how you're working. You have asked them multiple and multiple and multiple times and they've blown you off. So we need to stop protecting them from the consequences of their action. The consequence of the action of blowing you off around their belongings is to deal with it. And LT, I'm not saying that you actually are doing that. I just think it was a good example to help me give that, for instance. So, Dustin Scott, you want to know what the medication's called? It's propranolol. And the brand name of that stage fright medications is Inderol. So it's a beta blocker. You're going to ask for a beta blocker that will help you not feel nervous when you go into court and keep a clear head. So yeah, it's propranolol. Yeah, because I agree, April. We just end up being so empathic. We end up being so careful. And I agree with you. There is fear involved. Somebody says we don't do this because we're afraid. Yeah, but here's the thing. You guys are all leaving the narcissist. You're breaking up with them. And yeah, I know that you're having the legal piece is the last piece, but remember that. You're not living with them anymore. You're not having to live with them anymore. We need to reject the fear. I'll tell you, when I wrote Love You More, it was terrifying. I mean, I was telling secret. He told me early in the relationship that whatever happened needed to stay between us. I'm breaking that by coming out and telling you all the nitty gritty details. I had to get to the place thinking, okay, so what's the worst could happen to me? All right, well, I could think of a few things that he could do, and then I had to step in and take care of so I could protect myself from those worst things. Not do them, but just protect myself from them. So could he break into my house? Well, need to get security on the house. Those types of things. So plan ahead. Think about the possible consequence and then plan ahead for yourself. Yeah, so that's okay, this is a really big point that somebody just made. I'm not talking to you specifically because I don't want to Siri cut cocoa nut. I can't, it's like circle coconut or something like that. Anyway, this is what this person wrote. I'd rather live with him and have access to my child than going through court every year for 9 years. So I want to push back. This is the common thing that, okay, back in the day when I first went through grad school, we used to think it was the best interest of the kids to stay in a relationship. It's not. Actually, research shows it's not. Because think of it this way. Your child's living with a mom who is being harassed and harangued and abused every single day. You are compensating and coping with an abusive situation. You are not at your best self. So as a result, your child's living with a mother who's compromised and an abusive father. Wouldn't it be better if 50% of the time your child lived with a mom who's at peace, getting on with her life, healing, regaining her confidence, rebuilding her social support network, not being on fight or flight constantly, not walking on eggshells, learning how to have actual real conflict with people who are healthy, and then coping with dad the other 50% of the time? Now, I hear your argument was, I'm tired. I know this person's going to make my life hell in court. That says to me, then the difference with that is get a really good attorney. No, he's taking custody and I can't see my kid at all. Oh, and he's abusing her. I don't have you 50-50. Oh, I'm so sorry. So that's a tough situation. So yeah, as I said, I didn't know your situation for oh, and it cost you $90K. Yeah, somebody told me they'd spent $250,000 in custody. I mean, the amount of money that goes into these is insane. It's insane. And you know who the real winners are? It's not either parent, it's the courts. It's sick. I agree. It is really sick. I'm sorry that happened to you. And I'm also sorry that he got 100% of custody. Wow, that's devastating. So do you help narcissists? Do you help narcissists or just their victims? Well, that's a good question. Most narcissists don't come for help. Yeah, I actually worked with several narcissists back in the day when I was doing treatment. I had several clients that were narcissistic. Yeah, absolutely. They didn't make a lot of gains. The gains are really minimal. They're not very insightful and they lack empathy, and that works against them because think of it this way. You ever hear the saying when you're cutting a board, measure twice, cut once? Well, you have to measure. And narcissistic people don't measure, which means self-observation, self-reflection, because that then makes them feel uncomfortable. So as a result of that, then they aren't very good at, they're not very good at changing, because you have to have an ability to look at yourself in order for you to know to do something different. Does Ben or Lee help narcissists, raw motivation or mental illness? I don't really know. I don't think Ben focuses, I don't think his target audience is narcissist. I don't know who target audience is narcissist, honestly. I really don't. But what I would do. If you guys are looking for somebody who specializes in a narcissist, I would go out onto the internet and I would put in psychology to get today. And then I would put in one of your filters is somebody with a personality disorder who specializes in that. Because here's the thing. Psychologists are by ethical guidelines to only advertise what they're competent in, or they could be reported to their licensing governing body. So if you say I'm an expert in personality disorders, you better be, or you're at risk. So I think usually those advertisements are reasonable. Yeah, I agree, Kate. I think those are reasonable ways to find somebody as a specialty. I don't take one-on-one clients, but I do have a toxic-free relationship club membership. We go live every week for group, and at a higher level, you can get VIP one-on-one consultation with me every month. So that's available on my website. If you guys would like to have more contact with me, would like to be part of the community, maybe you want to be part of the group coaching, or you're looking for more one-on-one, I do it once a month as part of everything else. You also get the group coaching, you also get the community component, but yes, I do work that way. There was another question that came back in. So I have actually looked at myself, and I find myself bullying people just for amusement, and I don't have a lot of empathy for them. Yeah, that does sound like that's a problem. I mean, I would wonder what is leading you to feel like you want to pick on people. It obviously is a defense mechanism that makes you feel better. Maybe it's a way for you to feel like you're one up on that person, like you have an advantage of them, or like they're somehow feeling contempt for them or disrespect makes you feel better. So yeah, I definitely would see that as something that should be worked on in therapy. Oh, Mariel, you know what? It's going to be on this live. Mariel just stepped on. If I don't know if you guys know this on TikTok, but these lives are being taped, and they're taped. You can find them on my page in Facebook as well as on YouTube. So you can go back and replay it. Maybe there's a part of it that you really want to see over and over. Maybe you need to hear it because it just didn't make sense to you. But I would highly recommend to check out Facebook as well as YouTube. Um, my therapist says it's not widely spoken, but we all reject narcissists. No one wants to work with them. Kerman, that's actually not true. I wouldn't reject them. I worked with them. I had several on my caseload, and my caseload, to give you perspective, was only 12 clients a week. And I bet you at least 2 of them every week was a narcissist. So I wasn't rejecting them. I do know that it is true that some clinicians will do that, but yeah, and a more ethical one won't. It really won't. Well, thank you so much. Somebody said I just was watching my story and they feel for me. I appreciate that. I want you to know, thank you for being a follower and thank you for just giving me a gift. I want you to know I'm doing really well. It's been 5 years since that story happened and I'm doing really well. So my ex, Ronan the voice just said, my ex, yeah, measure twice, cut once. My ex not moved out of our child out of state during the divorce. Now I'm lucky to see the kid once. Ronan, how in the world did that happen? I am stunned that the judge in that case didn't like slap your partner's hand brutally for that. That is not, wow. That's awful. My husband also won full custody of my kids. The judge didn't believe that he was abusive. He's a covert narcissist, so he's excellent at playing the game. I think, Elizabeth, those are the situations, and I know it's already happened and it's over and done with. I know that. And those of you who have already lost full custody, I know that it's already done and this advice comes too late. And I feel bad about that. Please know, please. And if you guys don't know, I carry a lot of my own regrets. In fact, today I was writing the newsletter for this upcoming week, which, by the way, if you guys become a subscriber, you're getting the full access to the newsletter this next week. It's going out to everybody, the whole letter. But I made a lot of mistakes. But one of the things I think, if you were the covert narcissist, you lacked either the legal advice to know how to describe the abuse they're experiencing, or you were really struggling to put it into words, and you just didn't have the right people around you to help you identify the passive-aggressive games they're playing, the sadistic cruelness that they were going to, the way that they were being deceptive and lying. I know they're nasty. Coverts are the nastiest. Mine was a covert as well. Mine was a covert narcissistic sociopath. He was so good. I mean, people, I get so many people in that story of my how I met, married, and got scammed by a gold digger said, you weren't scammed. You saw the red signs. Red flags. You just chose to ignore them. What you don't understand is I told you the red flags because I'm post-it and I can see them better. I didn't see them in the middle of it. And then a lot of people came back and said, oh, I bet your family was screaming at you that he was a horrible person. Actually, no, my family loved him. He was so good that everybody who met him loved. I remember that my closest friend walked out and said, boy, were you lucky getting this guy. So no, he was really presented a good front. I was nervous, to be honest with you guys. When I thought I had to go to mediation with him, I was scared, really scared, because I knew he was good at spinning it into his direction and making it look like that it was unreasonable. I knew that. But here's the thing, and a friend of mine just went to court that I know, and she won. It went her way. You have to get an attorney that knows how to upset them. You want to make the narcissist angry on the stand or angry in mediation. You know their buttons really well. You know what upsets them, where their triggers are. You know where they get hot. Like mine is, don't accuse him of being less than. That makes him pissed off now. Or yeah, or just ask him repeatedly the same question. He gets real uppity about that. So if you just keep asking him the same question, mine would he would react. Eventually he'd get nasty. So you know what triggers them and what shows up, makes them look bad. Make your attorney or the mediator do that, Have them work on that. You're right. My attorney did not understand the abuse. Also, in my final hearing, I had a trauma response where I completely froze. Oh, yeah. So let me describe a trauma response. And by the way, Elizabeth, I had that too. Oh, have them ask, are you a jerk? I love that. So, okay. So we often think of fight or flight. There's not just fight or flight. It's also fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And some of us freeze. I freeze. I freeze. It's considered a psychological mental shutdown where you actually shut down. Your whole body, your mind shuts down. I would go mute. I literally have what's called selective mutism where I couldn't speak. And I would have periods of time when something really happened bad and I would go absolutely silent. I mean, like freeze up and I couldn't like almost move or do anything. I'd lose lose words, can't say anything. So Elizabeth, I'm so sorry to hear that that's what happened to you, that you went into a complete mental psychological collapse out of fear and that you just shut down. That's really awful. I didn't know this stuff 15 to 20 years ago. Yeah, it is hard, Tammy. It's a learning process. I didn't know it either. And here I'm a psychologist. People are like, yeah, you have a PhD. You know what? They didn't cover this in school. They actually really didn't cover this in school. Yeah, selective mutism often happens in childhood. That's absolutely Tammy, right, Tammy? You know, but however, it can also happen, by the way, I'm autistic. It can happen to autistic people. It can also happen in a fight, flight, fawn, or it can happen in a freeze mode. You can also experience, if you Google it, you can find out it happens in the freeze. Yeah, covert narcissists are so devious. They are so devious. So if anybody, if you're listening to this and you guys are thinking about, I want to leave and I know I'm in a relationship with a covert, I want you to really begin to think about how you're going to prove this person's up to no good. I want you to begin to collect evidence. That's one of your jobs, is to think of this like a chess game. You got to get a step ahead, two out there ahead of this person. You know their arrogance. You know where they think they're being super sneaky and they may not be all that sneaky. Try to begin to think about that so that you can find proof that this person is doing the things that you're suspecting that they're doing. So how do you make him divide the house? He won't let me, and he doesn't do anything he won't do anything to buy me out. Do you have an attorney involved? Because it sounds like you're trying to negotiate this on your own, Kinesia. And I would say that's a mistake. And I know, Kinesia, you've been asked to, yeah, you really need to talk to an attorney because he's going to sit there and just sit on you. There's no compulsion. And by the way, in your state, I'm assuming you're in the United States, there's eviction laws. I know because I used to be a landlord. So believe it or not, despite the fact you don't have a rental with him, a rental agreement, the courts are going to view it as if you do. So you may have to go through a process of eviction with him. Yeah, which is hard, I know. But so again, it means you've got to speak to an attorney. I'd highly recommend that you do it. I'd highly recommend that you reach out to Angela at Family Court Corner, although she's more about custody. But I would, at this point, unless there's kids involved, I would talk to an attorney. Again, think about subscribing to the newsletter for $5 a month, because one of the past ones, I don't remember which one, but I have actual questions that you can use to be able to pick a good attorney. Why am I not a landlord now? Actually, well, first of all, my situation's changed. So when I was a landlord, I was married to my first husband and he was an engineer and we had all these contractors. And so when he died, I suddenly had to do it all on my own. And I don't really want to manage subcontractors as a landlord. So I don't really want to have to do the flip. And then I moved away and I'm living now in a state, in a city that's super expensive to buy real estate. And I really want to do it. Now, I do have vacation rental property. I have one of that. So, oh, you're in the UK and you can't evict him unless he punched you or something. Yeah, that's tough. See, I don't know the laws in the UK. I only know what laws are in the United States. And even then, they all vary from state to state. That's the other tough part. Just because it's true in one state doesn't mean it's true in the other. Yeah. Yeah, Elizabeth, I'm really sorry that you froze and that went that way. Elfover said, my ex lied about me on Darvo and then has been granted full custody of our newborn because she never got divorced from her ex. I'm having to file additional motions to establish parentage. That's really good that you're doing that, and it's how crappy that that's happened. But it is good that you're forcing it forward and that you have a plan. I hear that you have a plan, because what you're doing right now, and that's what a lot of us do, and that is we feel so outraged and angry. One of the things we need is to have some realization this person is going to take everything to their advantage, any direction they possibly can. Yeah, I get that it's horrible. It is horrible. All of us victims have really horrible experiences like this. But I'm glad you're pursuing forward and you have a plan of action. That's awesome. I'm looking to invest in the United States. How difficult is it to deal with Section 8 tenants? It's tough. I'm not saying not do it, but I definitely would join a rental owner property association. In the state that I lived in, it was called RPOA, and they can give you a lot of ins and outs, like how to know that there's good tenants and good credit, and how to observe all of that. So I'd recommend that you do that. How do I deal with the lies in court so that I have the facts as evidence? He's just lying in response. That's really the job for your attorney to prove that that's not true. That a good attorney will cross-examine and point out the inconsistencies of that. It suggests to me that you have an attorney that maybe is not very skilled. Because a good attorney would say, well, that's really odd. You said you did this because on these dates you did these things. So please explain, because that doesn't line up. See what I'm saying? A good attorney would be able to do that. You do just get pulled into a situationship with somebody like that. I do agree. It's very easy to have that happen. Well, guys, it's time for me to wrap up. I really have enjoyed being with you all on this. I didn't hear the suggestion. Yeah, exactly. Kate, thanks for suggesting Kinesia again, Family Court Corner with Angela. We have made it multiple times today. I really highly recommend that you do that. Hey, this has been wonderful. So next week, bring your questions about the narcissist. I'm going to come in more with just an open Q&A with all of you. So if you really want to understand better about a narcissist, and if you're struggling right now with managing this, please consider New Powerful You. It's a group coaching that starts on October 9th. Goes weekly for an hour and a half on Wednesdays afternoons. All right, you guys, this has been awesome. I really appreciate it. I'll be back here next Tuesday. And thank you so much for hanging out with me. Be sure to like and follow if you haven't, because I love getting to know all of you. It means a lot to me to do that. So be sure to like.